Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome back to tonight's second half. Before we jump into tonight's second half, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. The merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They all were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost you a cent. Click that like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon. Please share this video. And folks, leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go, and they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into tonight's second half, shall we? Today's first encounter. I was driving down to my home in East Naples, Florida from Long Island, New York. I left that morning at 6:30 in a rental car from the airport. I was driving non-stop, just gassing up. I had made it to the Florida border in about 13 hours using Google Maps to navigate. It took across the East Coast to west to the Interstate 75 on 40 through Ocala National Forest. I had never been through this way as far as I know. I was following my navigation. I estimate it was between 11 p.m. and midnight. I had just been noticing how it was such a rural, open area. It seemed like I was in the middle of nowhere. I noticed the bright moon, and it did seem kind of eerie. I was driving on this two-lane road in the middle of nowhere. I had the thought, hope my car doesn't break down here. Within a short time, I saw what I can best describe as an orangutan, 3.5 to 4 feet, waving long arms as it scurried to avoid my car. I just missed hitting it. I could see how it sped up to just make it past my car. I was moving between 50 and 65, but the thing that really freaked me out at that moment was, as it passed my car, it turned its head. And I clearly had the feeling of its intelligence expression as it gave me the impression of a look that you almost hit me, asshole. I thought I saw an alien or an E.T. It clearly had some kind of intelligence that disturbed me for years. In a discussion with someone interested in Bigfoot in conversation at work up in the Northeast, I told him the story. I'd never heard of skunk ape stories, or had any knowledge of any legends of anything in Florida. When he heard the story, he immediately said he presumed and believed that I had seen a skunk ape, and believed me. So I went on the internet to see what information was out there, found Dave Healy info and descriptions of legends of skunk ape. The one thing that I found that was interesting is there are different descriptions of it being kind of orange with long arms, and of juveniles. I don't think this was an adult. I didn't see any others. The memory has stayed with me. I was definitely not seeing things. It was no bear, and if there were no orangutans in Florida, what was it? It clearly walked upright, had long arms, and seemed to have intelligence the way it turned and looked at me. I just wanted to convey my weird occurrence. I wish now I had stopped and taken down more details of the location and other details, but it was kind of frightening as well, just being in such a remote area alone. Keep your eyes open at night when driving around Ocala National Forest. That's all I can tell anyone. Today's second encounter. This happened in the Canadian province of Saskatchewan in the winter of 2015. This happened around Christmas time, so we had lots of snow, and it was very cold, minus 25 degrees Celsius. My dad was driving my sister and I to a small city that we lived near. It was only 6 p.m., but it was already dark. We only live about 10 miles out of town, so it's not like we were in the middle of nowhere. However, the two-lane highway was unlit and very dark. I was in the back seat, my younger sister in the passenger. Suddenly I noticed something in the headlights. Something ran across the road in front of us. It was so fast my dad didn't have time to brake or react, and then it was gone. What the heck? My dad's eyes widened. I couldn't believe what I had seen. It almost looked like a dog, or maybe more like a deer, but certainly wasn't either of those things. It was a dark blur. It looked like a lanky humanoid, but with long limbs and ran on 4 legs. It was about the size of a large dog or a small deer, but its front and back legs bent like a human arm and leg. I was too stunned to say anything. All I could think was, what the hell did I just see? My younger sister looked at my dad and then me, and her mouth was wide open. "You guys saw that too?" she asked. I nodded, eyes wide. We spent the rest of the drive feeling uneasy. My dad speeding faster than he usually does. I was so relieved when the first streetlights appeared in the city limits. We still bring it up to this day. Still as confused and spooked as when we saw it. Today's third encounter. I have some friends near Shiprock, New Mexico that are big into researching Sasquatch and skinwalker sightings. They've been featured on shows like Finding Bigfoot, Coast to Coast AM, countless podcasts that speak about paranormal, and on several History Channel programs. These people are the real deal. A few years ago, my wife and I were on vacation, and part of our trip would be driving through their town. Taking advantage of this opportunity, we decided to spend a few nights out there and hang out with them. We met up, went to dinner, and talked about our personal paranormal experiences, recent Sasquatch and skinwalker sightings. I wanted to experience searching for skinwalker evidence for myself, so during the course of our conversation, I asked if they would be willing to take me out in the field the following night and search for these elusive creatures. Being that most of them are Native American, they were very hesitant, and only one of them agreed to it, so the rest of the group decided to meet us on my last night there and take me Sasquatching instead. The following day, my friend arrived at the hotel and picked me up at around 5 p.m. We must have driven about an hour and a half out of town, mostly through dirt roads, to a place known locally to have lots of skinwalker activity. By the time we reached the location, everything was dark. He shuts the truck off, and like most paranormal investigations, we sit and wait, trying to listen for anything out of the ordinary. For the most part, it was quiet, other than a bunch of annoying crickets making noise. Nothing much was happening. My buddy told me about recent sightings and his own encounter with these medicine men. Long story short, after about an hour, he told me to get out of the truck, walk outside, and towards the front of it, to try to listen out for anything. He said that if anything happened, he would immediately turn the lights back on the truck and light up whatever may be there. Basically, he wanted me to be human skinwalker bait. I was hesitant for a moment, but since I had a weapon on me, I thought I'd be okay. But I also knew that bullets would do nothing to a skinwalker unless they were blessed and have a specific type of white powder on them. Just a quick interjection. It's ash. Mine does not. Just as I had made my decision to get out of his truck, the night turned even darker. This wasn't a regular dark night type of dark. This darkness had a purpose to it. It felt extremely ominous. It also got extremely cold, and we both noted that all the little critters had gone quiet. After hesitating for a while, I decided to open the truck door to get out. But as I did, I had my foot ready to touch the ground, and we heard a loud whistle. It wasn't a distant whistle like the air brings towards you. This was right next to us. It sounded like it was inside the cab of the truck. Obviously, I thought someone had snuck up on us, or that my buddy was trying to screw with me, but when I looked at him, he had turned completely white. The expression on his face had totally changed. Seeing him that afraid naturally freaked me out and put me on high alert. I tried to snap him out of it. He seemed frozen in place. The whistling continued a couple of times, and I was screaming at my friend at this point. Eventually he came to his senses and began to react to what was happening around us. He then immediately turned his truck back on. We grabbed our flashlights and looked all over the place to see what the hell was out there, but of course we found nothing. Feeling nervous and him being native, we decided to leave that place right then and there. The next day, he and a few friends picked me up again and took me out at night to search for Bigfoot out at Shiprock Mountain. While investigating, we found what's known in the field as a Bigfoot nest. Inside of the nest were tons of dried out eaten animal carcasses and bones, mostly deer. As we were trying to figure out what lived there, we suddenly heard a loud Sasquatch yelp. It wasn't a coyote or a mountain lion type of yelp. This yelp was felt in our bones. You could literally feel the vibration in your chest. Of course, we all started searching around to see what the hell it was. I didn't see anything, but two of my partners saw something moving up on the ridge. They were scared enough to draw and cock their weapons. About 10 minutes later, we began to hear several footsteps all around us. We couldn't see who or what it was because it was really dark, even with our flashlights turned on. After hearing these footsteps getting closer and less afraid of us, we ended up leaving that area ASAP. These are my personal experiences, and they are 100% true. I don't expect anyone to believe me. Today's fourth encounter. It was 2007. I was 18 years old. I grew to know about the Dogman and really didn't believe it was real. I had played in the woods a lot as a young child. One warm fall day, my boyfriend, myself, and two friends went to see my grandmother at our family cabin. When we got there, my two younger cousins were there as well. They wanted to walk down to the river, so we all went, leaving my grandmother to have some quality time by herself without the boys. As we walk up the hill, the boys wanted to race the two older boys. So, when we got to the start of the trail going to the river, all four boys lined up and I yelled, "Ready, set, go." As the boys ran down, us girls, we started yelling, "Run, faster, who's gonna win?" Just then a huge buck came from nowhere and my boyfriend grabbed one of the younger boys out of the way. I saw the buck and looked to see where it had come from. See, my family is very into hunting, and we hadn't been quiet by any means. This deer should have heard us long before we were close, and run off before we saw it. As I looked where it came from, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was like my brain and eyes were fighting to make sense of what was happening. A huge black dog standing on two legs was standing there. It looked like a man with a dog's head. It wasn't looking at me, it was looking at my boyfriend. It looked to be out of breath, like it had been running. I looked at my boyfriend and he was looking at it, but the others were watching the deer, and when I looked back to see it run back down the hill, I ran up to my boyfriend. His eyes were wide, and he looked at me, and all I could say was, "Yeah, I saw it too." The younger boy and our two friends did not see it, so we went to the river and back to the cabin. We left, and me and my boyfriend really didn't talk about it. Later that night, some more friends came over, and all of the boys wanted to play Guitar Hero. As they played, I took a picture of them. Now my boyfriend and I live in a farmhouse, a very old farmhouse. The windows are floor-to-ceiling windows. They are about 6 to 7 feet tall. In one of the pictures, you can see my dog lying on the floor sleeping, and all of the boys are in the picture. Well, it was about a week or two after the picture was taken, and a friend wanted to see the pictures I had taken that night, so I put them on my laptop. She was looking at them when she yelled for me and my boyfriend to come. She had zoomed in, and in the corner top of the window was a dog's face with its mouth open. We couldn't believe it. After she left, my boyfriend and I sat there looking at it. Had to think, did this thing follow us? Did it find us? Was it mad about the deer? This was terrifying. Before anyone bites my head off, the picture is not available. I don't even have it, so don't bite my head off. Today's fifth encounter. Me and my cousin were on a back road outside of a small northeast Texas town coming home from my grandparents'. There are white-tailed deer all over this area, and we see them all of the time. But this time, myself and my cousin pulled up to what looked like a female white-tailed deer. Something was off with this deer, though. It had zero reaction to me honking my horn at it. And when I flashed my brights at it, it seemed unfazed by it as well. We started looking at it with a little more interest when it didn't react to anything. As I started really looking at it, I realized that it looked really off. The deer-looking creature was a little taller than a Great Dane with legs like a whitetail, but it didn't have deer hooves, and its torso looked about half the length of a regular doe. Its head was shaped like a deer, but it was bent irregularly, and it had jagged, sharp-looking teeth. I'd really like some feedback. This really freaked me and my cousin out. And today's final encounter. Back around 20 years ago or so, there was going to be a full moon right at Halloween. Not like this year when it was dead on, but close enough for government work, as we say around here. There's a place a little way from my house, maybe 20-minute walk, where I and my friend Dee had previously had some unusual experiences. I'll discuss those sometime later. To set the scene, there's an open field that used to be a farm field right next to Pigeon River. The field reaches about 100 yards from the river to a sudden wooded upslope. These woods go for probably a mile or so before it butts up against a major highway. If you go up the slope maybe 30 yards from the very center of that field, you'll find an old wet weather pond turned swampy area. The swampy area is probably 75 yards wide and a good 120 yards deep going back into the woods. This area sits in a natural valley. You go up the slope to get to it on one side, and the other three sides are sloped going up, fairly steep ones at that. It's the only flat place once you leave the field. Being that it was going to be a full moon and Halloween, Dee and I decided to go see what would happen up there. We figured we would find something, and boy, were we ever right. We decided that midnight was the best time to be there. If nothing was happening, then surely something would as the night went on. So about 11:30 we set off. Like I said, it's a full moon, not a cloud in the sky, so it was easy to follow the trail. Not that I hadn't traveled it 100 times when I was little. This had been one of my favorite places to play. We got to the middle of the field almost exactly at midnight. When we looked up the hill toward the swamp, we realized that there was a glow up there. Yeah, it was a full moon on a cloudless night, but this light was different. It was more orange, like a lantern light, and it radiated from the swamp area. It was immediately obvious that this was not the moonlight. The woods were silent except for a faint whispering. I tell you what I believe was happening, and I don't care if anyone believes me or not. The light we saw was from lanterns, and lots of them. The whispering was voices in low, pleasant conversation. There was a festival going on up in those woods, and who do I believe it was? The little folk. Plain and simple, and you'll never convince me of otherwise. They were having a party to celebrate the day, and I don't believe they were in our, plane of existence maybe. I think they were in their own realm. because of that day and the moon cycle had somehow overlapped with our own. My friend and I could only stand there for a long time and stare in silence. Like I said, I knew instantly what was happening up there, and I think they did as well. And the longer I stood there, the more I wanted to go into those woods. I was fascinated, excited, and terrified all at the same time. But in the end, I could not force myself to take that walk. To quote H.P. Lovecraft, "The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown." Honestly, there are days when I deeply regret it. If I had gone up there, would I have come back? If I did come back, would I still be the same? Would I even be me anymore? Would I come back to the same time I left, or maybe come back in some other time? I'll never know, and maybe that's for the best. Dee and I didn't speak a word, just eventually turned and walked away. When we got back to my house, simply said goodbye and went home, which was fine, because I had no idea what to say about what we had just experienced, and we never talked about it at all, come to think of it. Unfortunately, our friendship has long gone by the wayside, or I'd call them to see what they think after all of these years, or if they even remember, or will acknowledge that they remember. So that's my experience. I'm going to add a little update from a subscriber. A couple of months ago, a subscriber shared what she thought was a vampire encounter. She had two. One was in the Superdome of Louisiana. And after hearing them, I almost felt like they were reptilian. Well, she sent me an update, and now it seems like she thought about it and maybe feels like it's a reptilian encounter as well. But she had wanted to share a couple of things that she had forgot while she was trying to remember and type everything out while having a busy schedule at home as well. Reptilian encounter. I forgot to add these details to my email I originally sent you, as I don't work too well with constant distractions in my house, so I forgot to include them, but adding to the probable reptilian encounter I witnessed. I also remembered 3 other details about the New Orleans Superdome creatures I saw in the vampire/reptilian encounter a while back you put up that I sent you and you uploaded. The first one is that when they were passing right in front of me and I looked up at their faces, their nostrils underneath on both of them as they walked by me were both sealed underneath with a bluish, pinkish, clear gel, sort of looking like the same gel substance that was coating or surrounding their skin everywhere, especially on their faces. It certainly didn't look like they could breathe at all through their nostrils. They were completely clogged up like that. So it was a pretty disgusting sight. It clearly appeared to be an entirely overall gel coating surrounding them that resulted in the odd effect or appearance, but I don't think that was the reason I felt that punch in the gut sensation. I think that was caused by something else, but I have no idea what, unless they were emitting some kind of close-range power frequency that could have caused that type of powerful pain I felt. They never touched me at all, of course, just passed very close in front of me, way too close. The second detail I forgot to mention in that report was that there was a slight instance that I was able to notice something odd about their non-existent lips. This occurred as they were only about 2 feet approaching me from the left and very rapidly, just about to pass. I noticed at a certain very quick angle, the way the bright sunlight was hitting their faces, that they really didn't have lips at all. Just a thin line across the bottom of their face that was supposed to be lips. But at that very quick and sudden angle of sunlight, when they were getting really close, I Noticed some cracked lines going inwards towards the line that was supposed to be their mouth. The cracked lines were bigger in the middle at the center of the top and bottom, and then each cracked line got smaller toward the outer edge of their mouth lines. They weren't too many, but they were noticeable, particularly at the top. They didn't have any apparent lips whatsoever, not like humans do. This was strange because I only saw this detail very quickly, as if a brief flash as they walked extremely close. I think this was the only briefly noticeable, mainly due to the bit of quick shadow effect from these inward-facing cracks at the momentarily angle from the direct bright sunlight that was behind me and slightly to my right at that moment they passed. The crack lines were maybe a half an inch in the center and a quarter of an inch and smaller towards the outer edge. Their mouths were also sealed shut with that gel-like coating surrounding their face. I don't know exactly what these creatures were or how they were even breathing with their nose and mouths completely sealed like they were. However, very strange thing is, two more disgusting observations, I guess. Third detail I should have explained more clearly was the reason they both appeared to be gliding along was because they walked forward without ever straightening their legs up like humans do as they walk. Their knees, or probably because they didn't have any knees at all, were continuously in a bent position as they took steps forward. Their legs were never straight up vertically as they walked forward, but both legs were always bent at the same angle, like a skier wearing ski boots on a hillside. People always lock their one standing rear leg as they take a step forward in order to be able to take a step forward, but these creatures did not. I tried to imitate the way they walked, and it's extremely difficult, if not impossible. Yet they were maintaining a speed and forward direction quite easily, without effort as they walked forward. This was their natural walking position, and it was definitely not a human gait. That's the reason their head position was so level and even as well. So, you're probably correct in your assessment that these were indeed reptilian creatures, and that, my friend, I witnessed. I think the cracked mouth lines reinforce that assumption pretty well. But because I am not familiar with them and never saw anything like them before, and thank goodness for that, I really have no clue what they were at all.
Alright folks, I hope you all enjoyed tonight's second half as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Guys, your support is what makes this channel so special, and it is my honor to really share these experiences and theories and ideas with you guys. You guys are awesome, so thank you. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on your family, your friends. We know these creatures are out there. We know they are real. The best thing that we can do is inform our family and friends. What they choose to do with that info is on them. God bless you all.